All right, man. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. Yeah. So, do you mind kind of introducing yourself to people?
Yeah, sure. I'm Alexander Pryor. I'm from Destin. I started in real estate when I was about 18, and got into it from I moved out when I was 16, started a software company. All my clients are in real estate, and ended up partnering with one of them. And kind of just figuring out as I go. While I was working, I get my high school diploma, and just kind of expanded into, we did a lot of flipping. We get a ton of deals, so wholesaling some of the excess deals. And then now about a year ago, got into developing single family subdivisions. So we've got about 700 or so homes in the pipeline right now. And the next month or so goes well, it should be well over 1,000. So it's been pretty wild ride, just kind of figuring everything out as you go, and just getting deals and figuring out what to do with them.
And how old are you?
21.
Crazy. Yeah.
So where are you in school?
And then where are you in college?
Yeah, I got a really good offer to go to Johns Hopkins for applied math. So I'm still doing that while doing all this. I just have to fly back way too often to go to commission meetings, stuff like that, to kind of get these developments through.
So start at the very beginning. Software company. Why real estate? Talk about that.
Well,
what was a software company?
I was just a nerd. So I used to program and do math and stuff for fun, and I not the greatest family life, so I moved out early. I had to support myself somehow, so I did what I knew how to do, was programming at the time. Found out a way to get clients. That was my first experience cold calling and stuff like that, and really just trying to come out of my shell. And then I met my partner. I was doing some work for him first, and then I kind of just saw what he was doing with cold callers right in the very beginning, getting off market deals, getting spreads on them, buying, flipping, wholesaling, whatever it is. I'm like, it was like Wolf of Wall Street. He showed me a check within the first hour I met him at a group like this. Actually, I went to a local group to try and get more clients, and just like Wolf of Wall Street, showed me a check for like $130,000 for flipping a couple acres of land to a builder. And remembering that is what got me into land again about a year ago. And I was like, holy shit, I just dropped everything, and I was like a bug on the wall, learning until I felt confident enough myself to get on the phone and start getting some of my own deals.
Gotcha. So was there a certain book or anything that you read? How did you find real estate?
It found me. So I just realized that realtors, mortgage brokers, et cetera, title companies, did a lot of work for them. They're the ones who have all the money to pay for marketing or custom software and stuff like that. So it wasn't really on purpose. It was just a little niche that I found.
Gotcha. So talk about your first deal. What was it? Was it a flip? How'd you source it? The whole story.
My first deal I got under contract or closed?
I guess let's do both. Let's do it for contract. Yeah.
Okay. So my first deal
very different, those two things.
Oh
yeah.
My God. My first deal I got under contract was a lead from our cold caller. I called him and got all set up. It was a tiny little apartment, and for like $60,000, I believe. And then we were going to buy it, put 15 into it, sell it for 120. Nothing super crazy. And I was stoked. And we go in there, and the tenants in there, it was absolutely trashed. It was about a cockroach every inch or so. And they offered me some shrimp that they cooked for their curry. I did take a bite.
With the roaches visible?
With the roaches visible.
All right.
All everywhere, even the kitchen. It
sounds like a New Orleans restaurant.
I thought it was a wallpaper. Looked just like it. And my partner Vinny, he's like, spit that out. And I did, but it smelled terrible in there. And the old man we were under contract with, we had a long due diligence period, ended up closing with someone else a week before our closing date for like 10 grand more, 10 to 15 more. And called him up, and I was like, dude, what the hell happened? He's like, who are you? And denied ever signing on the contract. So it ended up in litigation, but it just wasn't worth the juice there.
Mm-hmm.
But the first deal I closed, it was a single family we bought for a 100, 120, something like that. Put 60,
And this is with your partner that you
Yeah.
met at the real estate
Yeah.
meeting?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
put 60 or 80 into it, and end up selling for like close to 300, something like that.
Mhm. So how did you source that one? Did you call them, or did you have because he has a cold call team right now? You have
Yeah,
a cold
so
call
I
team.
have a whole call center built out. So pretty much 99% of my lead flow is always going to come from cold calls, whether it's from me, one of the cold callers, etc. And it's just the most direct and the best marketing channel I've used.
Mhm.
And so we get an absolute ton of lead flow across everything we're kind of looking for, whether it's still single family in the markets we still operate in, or pretty much nationwide now for land, for either some subdivision plays or to actually do a physical development. But you asked like how we got that deal.
Yeah, how you sourced it, who
Yeah,
called.
It's all
everything.
going to be from cold calling.
Yeah.
For the
Yeah.
most part. So we have cold callers set up, and obviously we pull the lists, get all that in. They're dialing, and then leads come in. And I would say it's a lot easier to call those leads that come in from your cold callers or whatever marketing channel, because you already have an opening. It's not technically a cold call anymore; it's more of like a warm call.
Mhm.
And so it's a lot easier to say, hey man, Joe called you, yesterday. I'm just calling to get a little more info, and maybe we can meet up and figure something out.
Mhm.
It's a lot easier than saying, hey, this is out of the blue and random. This is Alex. I'd really like to make an offer for your property, you have a much better success rate with that because your cold callers are going through and weeding out all the chaff in the first place. So they're really there to be like a yes or a no on interest level alone. So if they have a yes or an interest, then they're sending us a lead. Even if they say, I want $1 million for, mobile home on half an acre. Could be that, but not here.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how it works.
So would you talk about the full life of that first deal that you did? So can you share numbers and stuff like that? Would you be comfortable?
I'm trying. I think I did. So we bought it for 120, and we put, let's say, middle ground 70,000 into it,
Mhm.
and I think we sold it for about 280, 290, something like that.
Okay.
It was a pretty cool win for your first deal.
So your first deal was a flip.
Yes.
So when did you start kind of adding some? Do you do much? I know you don't do much wholesaling now, but when did you kind of add wholesaling?
So
to that
it's
mix?
not that it was ever added. It was always kind of there.
Okay.
So either if we had too many flips going on at once, because like I said, with having a team of cold callers that are really good, you get a ton of leads.
Mhm.
So you can't reasonably buy all of them unless you have huge amount of capital or very 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 wealthy partners to buy all those cash or even get bridge loans on them. So it kind of happened as a byproduct of like, look, this is a great deal. Let's say it's a house they want 100,000 for. It needs 50 in work, and the ARV is 300. It's kind of a no-brainer. I don't have the money right now. Well, either you go and find the money, or in that case, sell it for 150 to 200 to someone who does have the money right now, who wants to go ahead and complete the project and get it done.
Mhm.
So it's just a byproduct of having really strong deal flow.
Mhm. And what does your deal flow look like? So even before the cold callers, and we'll get to that and how you built that up in a little bit. But do you pull lists? Are you driving for dollars? What does that look like? And what markets are you doing it in? Is it just local to you? How did you start?
So our single family, we still have a couple people working on that in our office. I'm pretty much well removed from it now, focusing on the development. It's pretty much just, you can go on any data source. I would not recommend PropStream, just because I've done a lot of split testing and the data isn't as accurate as on some other platforms. But you can pull, I prefer going direct to the county, going direct to the assessor, county appraiser, and just getting a list of all the parcels.
Mhm.
And then you can filter out within that Excel sheet there. Go ahead and get them skip traced. You could use, they're all about the same, like data skip or, some of the more premium ones, but they all use the same data source. It's just, what's the markup they charge? And then you go ahead and upload those into a dialer for your cold callers. And they're all about the same as well. I mean, they're all based on Twilio. And then just a couple of them are like Call Tools or Mojo. And you get those in, and if your cold callers are experienced, I mean, they just log in, they call, and magically leads show up in your CRM. And that's kind of how it works. But
Okay. So as far as getting that information about the properties from Parish for us, county, other places, how, because sometimes that can be difficult, right, to get from the local government. So how do you go about doing that?
Well, they're legally required to. They're the government. If worst case, you file a FOIA request.
Mm-hmm.
But in my main county, Okaloosa County, in the Panhandle, it's super. I can go on there and I can download the Excel sheet right there. In most
Really?
counties in Florida, you can do that. It depends if it's a non-disclosure state or not. I don't know if Louisiana is or not, but
What's that?
Yeah, disclosure states are the best because the data is a whole lot more accurate from any of these platforms, whether you're skip tracing, but it does help out a lot. But the other thing is, you really want to dial in on, let's say you want to go wholesale or flip single family. The lists I would focus on are on any of these platforms, like even like batch leads, which is pretty good comparatively to a lot of them on the market. You want to pull the absentee owners. I avoid pre-foreclosures like the plate because I've worked dozens of them and not a single one has resulted in a closing.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually you find out real fast why they're in that situation, and they are very, very difficult to work with. And so I recommend going to your code enforcement department, getting a list of, hey, give me a list of all the properties that have code violation liens on them. And that has been the most successful out of any list. That and tax delinquents.
Your top two are
Tax delinquents and code violations.
code violations. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, how are you? So I'm sure you were nervous getting on the first cold call and stuff like that. So that's common for a lot of people. How do you kind of get over that? Do you have any advice on people that are scared to start cold calling, scared to do the first one?
You literally just have to call. So I have trained a lot of people to go from so nervous, wanting to puke. Like for example, I have a girl on my team. She was a waitress before getting into real estate. She got her license, and I trained her for a couple of weeks, and she was unable to make a single call. She would get so nervous she wanted to puke, and I was the same way. And then it just took getting over that fear by just jumping into the fire. So trial by fire is the best way to go ahead and do it. And now she's clearing really big checks, on some of our deals for just working them.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Do you teach them a script? How do you mentor them and teach them to cold call effectively?
So one of the tips I give to both people on our team, people I'm kind of mentoring, or even our cold callers, the first thing I say is you're going to pick up that phone with no script, because I learned real fast that if you are making repetitive calls and you're relying on a script, you're going to sound like a robot no matter what. Same for your cold callers. How are they going to differentiate if they're using the same script as the dozen other wholesalers calling them? Because you have to realize now, and where we are, that these people, whether you're pulling the absentee list or any of that stuff, everyone else is doing the same, and there's a lot of competition. So either you have to find someone that's not been contacted yet, or make a more attractive offer, or relate to them personally. So there's no script that I allow. It's as simple as the cue I give is like, pick up the phone like you're calling, like you just got out of work and you're calling like your best friend. Like, hey Cole, it's Alex, what's up, man? And it's really that simple. Do not be professional. Get a little excited if you can, do some push-ups or jumping jacks, and have fun with it. Have crack jokes, have a sense of humor, because that's gonna set you apart from every other stiff or someone with a bad accent that's calling it.
Good deal. So where are your cold callers? Are they in the States? Are they somewhere else?
They're in South America.
Okay. Now, how do you deal with the accent thing? Because I know that sometimes it's a problem.
So that's the first criteria you look at. You have to interview a ton of them. So out of every dozen I interview, I hire maybe one. And the first thing is going to be the accent and the kind of vocabulary. So can they have humor? That's the second thing I look for, is because I joke with them a lot. It can get pretty extreme, but just to kind of test what they are personally, because personality and humor matters a lot, I think, in kind of getting these through. So hop on a call with them and then just role play a little bit. So, I'll say, hey, you call me, I'm a seller, you're calling, etc. And no scripts allowed, and have fun with it. you know, say stuff you probably shouldn't be saying,
Mhm.
just to kind of build that relationship.
Yeah.
And that's
Sure.
worked very well.
So, let's see. And if anybody wants to chime in, are you good with taking questions?
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions,
I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
I said that these are restroom, and I missed the first part, but are you focusing mainly on like houses or land and houses, or?
So we still do houses and single family stuff in like Pensacola, Tallahassee, or Pensacola, Panama City. And we're open to branching out to other areas, but my main focus right now is land for land development. So usually, if anybody has any of these, definitely shoot them over to me. Usually anything that can be 50 homes or above, typically that's about 20 acres.
Is it like the platted stuff, or like the one like on the paved road where you just split into like, because I know the ones that are platted out are like a lot more complex and like so you need like, almost kind of like need like a civil engineer from what I understand from listening to people. But like the other, like the ones that are like on a main road, it's like a simple, more of a simple process.
Yeah, it's called a minor split.
Yeah, like it's.
So
it's like,
we do those as well for stuff that doesn't make sense for developing a subdivision.
Yeah.
But mainly looking for subdivisions that we can put 100, 200, 300 homes in.
And do you use your own
Yes.
civil engineers, or
Yep.
you just hire one, or you got people in your?
I don't have one in-house, but we do hire them out,
Gotcha,
depending on where they're licensed, the area, et cetera.
gotcha.
any question?
Your pay structure for them, is it like flat, or do you offer bonuses for closed?
Flat and bonuses, because you want to keep them incentive. It's no different than having a sales team. So, I mean, sales, they work on commissions and incentives. So why not do the same for them? Because the dollar for us goes a lot further there. And they're a lot more motivated to do it. Because this is, you gotta remember, in some of these countries, this is probably the best opportunity they have available to them. And so you don't want to take advantage of that. So typically, let's say they want $5 an hour. I'll say, I'll give you 8, but you better show up excited.
Yeah.
Right? So, but you also have to keep them in check so they don't abuse that situation, because there is, you know, an ocean separating us. But yeah, always commission based plus base salary.
How do you find them?
It depends. Sometimes some of our best cold callers have called us because, you know, they have teams that are going through, and as soon as you have one, then they can refer you to a lot more. And that's worked very well for us, to where we have a whole network in South America where it's like, hey, I need 3 more cold callers next week. Okay, I got a couple people you can interview. And it works really well like that. But otherwise, starting fresh, I would say you can go on any of these remote work sites like Upwork, or I would not do Fiverr. You could, but you'd have to interview a lot of them. But you don't want to hire from a company that's kind of outsourcing these unless they're very reputable. I would say you want to find an individual and then kind of start fresh with that network there.
Do you ever get data from any of those sites like that, Fiverr, Upwork, or anything
No.
like that?
No.
Or Skip Trace or anything
No.
like that? No.
Because when you think about it, I always balk at how much we spend on data and skip tracing. It's one of our biggest line items. But that's what sets you apart, is because everyone else is doing as cheap as I can. I just need some phone numbers. But if you're paying your cold caller, you're paying for all the software, which adds up pretty quickly, especially at scale, and all the data, but you're calling all the wrong numbers. None of them are going to be interested prospects. What's the point? You're wasting all that money. So having quality data is the first step.
Now, are they all on a dialer? Talk about some of the softwares that you use.
Yeah, so right now we use ReadyMode as our dialer. And the benefit of a dialer is all you really have to do is, you know, besides configuring it to what you need to do, is get the data uploaded. And then let's assume your caller's trained, they know what they're doing, know how to use the platform. They go in and then they can call 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers at a time in an automated system. So you're not sitting at a spreadsheet, dialing on their cell phone, etc. So they can make usually 500 to 700 calls a day, I would say is a decent benchmark, to where they're going through all these big lists and, you know, they're getting hung up on, they're dealing with all the abuse that you deal with when you're cold calling. Got some funny stories from that. Learned a lot of interesting slurs. And really creative ones. And they're going through all that abuse, with a smile.
Mhm.
And sometimes, but yeah, so like ready mode, stuff like that, but other than that, it's all just standard.
Okay, but not prop stream.
Not prop stream,
People
no.
seem to love prop stream, but
Yeah, I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
But you're, with the Florida, you said you're pulling the data, you're getting the list straight from the county.
Yep.
Because Florida's, yeah, they have, but, so with those, do you outsource the handling, like the scrubbing of that list? Do you like get somebody on Upwork to do that, or you guys do that?
No, I just do it. It takes me like 10 minutes.
Okay, so you're really good with Excel, because I hate Excel.
Yeah.
So we're doing it, like, it's like, I'm good. My daughter does it.
Yeah, it's simple. It's like if it is sold in the past 2 or 3 years, I typically do before COVID.
Yeah.
Because if anybody bought during COVID, they more than likely do not have equity right now. Especially in coastal markets where everything's very similar, especially in my area. So filter out before COVID. So they've owned it for a certain time, so they have equity, more than likely. So that automatically makes it a lot more likely. And then you see if their mailing address on the tax rolls is the same as the property address. If not, they're an absentee owner. Whole lot more likely to sell and make a deal with you. Because then it's either a vacation home, second home, or just a rental and they moved out of state.
Do you also mail the, like LLCs, and so I know some people they do, and some people say they don't, like, do y'all keep the LLCs in, and stuff like that, or?
Yeah, I keep it in.
That's what I think is the best way, because we bought from LLCs, but we do the direct mail. I was wondering if have you ever compared, like, how the difference with the demographic, I'm thinking like the cold call, because we've never really done cold call on scale, but I'm thinking it's like gonna hit a younger demographic a lot better than the direct mail may hit like the older demographic, I'm thinking, but I don't know if you have any insight or feedback on that.
It depends. I haven't done direct mail personally, but on occasion I do send individual letters. Like if I absolutely need something like that's critical to a project or anything like that. But I have seen a lot of comparison between people I know that do both. Typically, they do it to combine the campaigns, so they just have more touch points and more familiarity, with the seller.
Yeah. Definitely.
How many calls would you say that you all make a day?
Oh God, the cold callers alone probably make around 8,000 to 10,000 a day.
And how many of those turn into people picking up the phone?
It fluctuates because there's a lot of management that goes into making sure people are actually picking up the phone.
Yeah.
So anywhere between like 15 to 20% is usually a pretty good metric, and that's an actual person on the other line.
Mm-hmm. And how many of that turn into a lead?
When did that turn into a lead? Usually so right now we probably get about 1 out of every 30 or 40 people.
Okay, that's really cool. What are your most common objections as far as like talking on the phone sellers?
I don't care, not interested, obviously, but that's more of a
You said you had some stories, you learned a lot of
status,
slurs.
usually it's all about price.
Yeah.
So everyone has been used to the pricing of 2020 and 2021, especially in the commercial world. When I'm calling up, because we used to do a bunch of industrial as well. When you're calling up a warehouse owner or someone who's just been watching Zillow day and night, they're stuck on those prices of Zillow said it's worth $500,000. It's really not, because comps have not kept up with where everything's going, just because the days on market has gotten significantly longer. And so it's usually always going to be price, because it's too recent in their memory for what pricing used to be and how fast things used to sell, as to the reality of where we are now, because it's kind of like a lagging trend.
Now, do you have an offer prepared for them on the phone when you're talking to them, or is that something you want to go check out first, then provide them an offer in person? What does that look like? Do you have a range?
The cold callers do not make offers on the phone. The goal with anything, I would say any marketing channel, is get them on the phone with someone who knows the market, knows the area, and is local as fast as possible. Typically within 5 to 15 minutes of the lead coming in, we have someone on the phone, whether it's me or someone else on the team. And so then we kind of take a look at all the call notes, all the information, look at the property a little bit, and actually get to know it. other than just make another blind cold call. But it kind of gives us a lay of the situation. And then you go in and you could have an offer if you know the market, you know the asset, know enough about it. But typically what I like to do is take an in-person meeting as soon as possible. And then that gives you time to walk the property, do more research, talk to buyers, stuff like that, and kind of run your numbers to where you can really get them a solid offer.
So the cold callers are there really to get a yes if they're interested, to funnel to you or someone on your team
Yeah.
to make a call, meet them in person.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
It makes it so that I don't have to sit at a desk dialing 1,000 people a day myself. It makes it so I'm only talking to interested sellers.
Makes sense. Yeah. You had a question? Yeah.
Do your cold callers, do they drive to you a price from the seller?
Yeah, so that helps a lot in weeding out what's worth our time. And usually what happens is the price that you and I would get on the phone is going to be different from what the cold caller is going to get on the phone. Because not only do, there's a cultural difference as well, knowing how to talk to these people. And, they're a lot more amenable when someone from their community is on the phone with them. So it usually works out to our benefit.
What does your follow-up look like? If someone says, no, they're not interested now, do you have any tools or anything to help you with follow-up?
Yeah, so everything is automated within our CRM and the dialer.
Mhm.
So if they're not interested, they don't get sent to the CRM. They stay in the dialer, and typically they're called again at 1 month intervals. Now, if someone is sent in as a lead and then I changed my mind, I'm not ready at any time, then typically you just put them on automated texting and the reminders to call, an email if they have it, to just kind of maintain presence. Because I've lost too many deals from not following up. I'd say that's the number one thing. And the goal with any of this direct-to-seller marketing is that you're not going to get a deal today. You're not going to get a deal tomorrow. You're not going to get a deal next month from talking to this person. You're going to get a deal 6 to 12 months from now. And that's the biggest thing, is it's an investment for your future deal flow that you're working towards right now.
What strategies do you do to try to squeeze a price out of them? That's kind of one of the hardest things to me, cold calling someone, squeezing a price out of the seller.
If they're really adamant about you making the offer first, stuff like that, usually I just give it to them straight, look, I can make you an offer right now that I can almost guarantee you're not going to take. Because usually I'll just offer something ridiculous, like half of what my actual offer would be typically, just to see if they'll bite. And, so I'd rather say, hey, I'd rather not waste either of our time, and kind of figure out if we're in the same ballpark here at least, and just kind of get past that.
How are you formulating these offers without seeing it in person? What are you doing?
So if it's for single family, obviously you run the ARV, and then you kind of estimate repairs from what you have. But usually for single family, if you don't know, just blind offer 50% ARV. You need to have significant margins these days, even within the ARV, to kind of make stuff work.
Makes sense. Now, if I understand it right, you've done texting before, cold texting. How does that compare to cold calling? I guess you prefer cold calling more. But...
I do prefer cold calling. I still text on my phone, because I still make a lot of cold calls myself. I'm too impatient to wait for a cold caller to turn a piece of land or something I want very badly into a lead, and they may not get a hold of them. But I also know that I have a much higher close rate, no matter what. Cold callers always have a lower close rate than you, just because of where they are. There's nothing to do with skill, it's just reality. But texting, yeah, so we did texting for a couple industrial and commercial campaigns, and we're doing it again now for land. So we use launch control, but we kind of stopped probably about a year ago because they changed the regulations every month, it feels like. So it went from, I could send 1,000 texts a day and saying, hey Cole, this is Alex, blah, 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 with whatever company, I was looking at 123 Main Street, want to see if you take an offer for it, interested in, talking about it. To, you can't say the name, you can't use the property address.
In the text?
You can't use in the text.
Okay.
You can't use certain words. You can't use sell, you can't use property, you can't use buy, because those are spam keywords. So it's very, very regulated now. And you kind of have to find a platform that's willing to like skirt those regulations just for the sake of getting your money. But I do think it works very well, and it could see faster results in terms of lead flow than cold calling. But I still think it's a good addition to, rather than like a standalone kind of platform, because it is very time intensive going through thousands of text messages, learning a lot more new slurs, and then kind of, because at the end of the day, you still have to get them on the phone.
Yeah.
So
What info are you trying to grab from sellers? Like either it would be on a call, text, what info are you trying to get from them?
I'm trying to figure them out, because I can get all the info I need, unless it's like interior property, but I'm thinking right now in terms of land for development. I can call the county, I can call the city. A lot of the platforms I use, I have information about wetlands. I know what zoning I need to get, and I know the process to get it, especially where I operate at. And so I'm really trying to figure them out, because they're the key piece to making the deal work. Because when it comes to development, you can't close on the land unless you're a bigger gambler than I am without full approvals to develop. And that's typically a 9 to 12 month process. So I need to figure them out, figure out what their needs are, what their timeline is. And obviously pricing is a big part of it as well. But because of the value add we're doing in terms of rezoning, getting entitlements, et cetera, we're typically able to pay above market for the land compared to what it's worth just as raw land.
Makes sense. Okay. So texting, cold calling, are there any other outreach methods that you like to use, or those?
That's about it. Those are kind of the standards,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
It can keep you busy enough and get you enough deals that you don't really need that much else. I mean,
There's direct mail. You've heard of like a blind offers or anything? I've never looked into that.
I don't really like blind offers. I mean, I know a lot of people that do them. Like they'll offer half the assessed value on the property appraiser site, and it does work, but it's too inconsistent for me. And at the end of the day, direct mail, you still have to answer the call. It always goes back to being on the phone with them, or meeting them in person. And they're not going to do that over text or sending love letters back and forth.
Yeah, sure. So what does your disposition strategy look like? Maybe talk about a little bit about private equity and explain private equity for those who might not.
Yeah, sure. So it depends a lot on the project and the asset type, right? So when we were just doing houses and single family primarily, and vacant lots, smaller stuff, but at volume, the dispo strategy was usually, okay, we have 3 different ways. So everyone in our office is licensed except me, funnily enough, because at the time I didn't have my high school diploma. I was still in school, so I couldn't even get my license. I just kind of stuck with it. I've been doing fine without it. Is 3 different ways. A, does this meet our criteria, and do we have capacity right now to buy this ourselves and flip it? Or B, is this a good enough deal to where it makes sense to where I can call up my buddy and he would want to buy and flip it, and we make a little bit of a spread there. Or C, they're all licensed, listed. And so kind of capture every way, through that. For the land development stuff, which I know probably doesn't help a lot of people, but it's more along the lines of speaking to every builder in the market, figuring out what they want, getting LOIs, which are letter of intents from them, for either the finished lot value or the paper lot value, and working with the county and city to make those approvals and development happen. And that's a very long and arduous process compared to slinging single family.
Yeah.
But a lot more rewarding. But you want me to explain a little bit more about private equity?
Yeah, sure.
So some of the private equity groups we've worked with, they could be multifamily syndicators or industrial guys. Essentially, they just have access to a lot more money than we do. They're doing absolutely nothing different other than they show up to the office in suits sometimes and have nicer chairs than me, and hold big board meetings for nothing. But they have access to typically either institutional or a lot of LP capital. And so they usually want north of $5 million deals. So that's why everything I do, I like to stay below that, besides for some of the single family developments. And so if you have a good deal, like let's say you have a warehouse that you're getting at significant discount. It'd be like a 12% cap rate, let's say. That would fly off the shelves in the right market. Then you could go to these groups and, they still cut you in, you can get equity, et cetera. But the only thing different, because a lot of them are still going direct to seller, is they are more in the shoes of a capital allocator than anything else. Because their goal is, how do I provide the returns to my LPs and reach that hurdle and get my promote? Because they get paid on fees for the deal, acquisition fees, AUM fees, typically. And they're all about putting out as much money as possible. So they can chase much lower returns than we can. Whereas for us, we won't even look at it if you can't double your money in a year, typically. So it's just more money at scale, chasing the same deals we are for the most part. But they're a little slower and clunkier and a lot more professional.
So how has that landscape changed in the last few years with interest rates tripling? Has anything changed?
Yeah, so when I was really heavy into existing commercial assets last year, I was working with a lot of private equity groups on multifamily, I believe even medical, a lot of industrial, IOS, and logistics type properties as well, because we have our acquisition channels down to a science, literally. I mean, we run split tests, have a bunch of data and all that stuff. And so they'd come to us to like, hey dude, there's nothing on the market that works. I've got zero deal flow, and at the same time, they get paid based on money they put out. If they're not putting out money, no matter how good or shitty the deal is, they still need to put out money to get paid. And so, we'd work with them and, get equity in the deals and stuff like that. But the biggest issue we encountered, like I mentioned earlier, is all of these large sellers, whether it's a $20 million or a $2 million warehouse or facility, is they've gotten blind 5 cap offers for all during COVID, because there's such an influx of essentially free money to where all these private equity groups, they'd love to own it at a 5 cap because they're paying probably 2% interest on the portfolio loan. So even though it's a 3%, return, that they don't bat an eye on that because they've got $1 billion more to deploy. And it all averages out. They don't care about the individual deal, they want the portfolio. And a lot of sellers are still stuck on that. And until rents start to decline and people just aren't seeing the same offers they used to because of the cheap and easy money, it's still a pretty difficult landscape.
Gotcha. So AI came out recently. Well, maybe not came out, but becoming more mainstream. And you see people using that for phone calls and such. Are you using AI in any of your day-to-day stuff?
Hell no.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm getting my degree in applied math, if I finish, was specifically for AI, because what I focused on previous to that was a lot of machine learning, developing neural networks and stuff for a lot of data-driven applications. And I just don't see any point. I hope everyone starts to use AI cold calling, because that'll make my guys stand out better. Because at the end of the day, it's not going to replace a person. I tell my guys, and I do it myself, is you want to make mistakes on purpose to be human. You want to sound human, because the second you come on like a salesman, like, hello, good sir, good morrow, salutations, how you doing on this fine day? You're a salesman. And then people will have a completely different demeanor with you on the phone or in person, and they don't feel bad when they hang up. But if you're just, you sound like a neighbor down the street, they might feel bad if they hang up, so they'll at least hear you out. And so I hope everyone uses AI, but even a lot of the larger groups that I know, it's just not much of a use case right now.
Yeah, makes sense. How do you keep track of all this? Like you mentioned CRM. What CRM do you use? How do you keep
Follow-up
track?
boss.
Follow-up boss.
Yeah. It's mainly retail, most for like brokers, stuff like that. But it just has the best interface I've ever used, best reliability, and it just looks really pretty. I kind of like it. And has a lot of really good automations you can build out of it.
So it can send text automatically?
Send text, emails, schedule calls, and they actually just came out with AI today.
Oh.
Like they'll listen to your calls you make on the platform, they'll give you a summary, and they'll suggest what you should say or do next, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
What about your regular CRM? Are you using, that's follow-up also with follow-ups, but do you have?
No, follow bosses, that's just what CRM is called, it's for everything.
Oh, that's for everything, that's not just for the,
Yeah.
okay. So I thought it was one addition.
Yeah, Zillow did buy it, yeah, they're buying everything.
So how do you kind of stay up to date with market trends? Have you had to make any big pivots recently? What does the last year look like?
So one thing, because I'm focused on, developing entire neighborhoods, hundreds of homes at a time. We really have to keep track of housing starts that show builder interest in these areas, because at the end of the day, there's really only maybe 5 to 10 builders across the country, disregarding regional builders, they're even gonna want to purchase the site or the finished lots. And so we really have to keep track of a lot of political stuff, like, what is being allowed, what is not being allowed. If they're saying that stuff is overbuilt, and you want to look at the days on market and sell-through rate of nearby subdivisions to your proposed project. So it's really just a lot of individual area and market research based on, how many houses on the market, what are they selling for, is the median sales price trending down, and is this an affordable median sales price?
Mm-hmm.
So typically you want to be around the national average, which ballooned recently, but I'd say 350-ish for what the home value be worth, and kind of back into your numbers from there.
So what kind of land are you looking for specifically? Is there a certain size or larger?
I mean, typically I say minimum 20 acres, and right now most of my stuff is in Florida, but we're looking Florida, Texas, Alabama, honestly just about everywhere besides Louisiana so far.
Yeah.
I mean, we will look at stuff, it's just not where I'm actively calling.
Yeah.
Why?
Got something against the
Why
Canadians,
aren't
huh?
you actively calling?
Why I'm not actively calling Louisiana, I don't have any experience over here, even though it is within like a 4-hour driving distance. I'm calling up to Biloxi right now, but I've slowly been adding in markets where there's still trending sales price increases over time. And I do know that Louisiana, I believe, was hit pretty hard with, days on market, inventory, et cetera, because we want to be where there is population, income, and sales growth.
So besides, go ahead.
I have another question. So you're buying land to then sell to like a deal board or something, somebody that's gonna do the build. You guys are not doing the build.
We are not doing the vertical construction.
Gotcha.
So there's 3
The
phases.
infrastructure you're putting in.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
3 phases. There's entitlements, which 9 to 12 months. I mean, that's what I'm mainly focused on right now. And then after you go through that amazingly fun process of being bashed publicly over and over while you're in a dorm room, yeah, it's crazy. Then you go to the horizontal, which, you get, I'm getting bids all over the place right now. It's gotten almost prohibitively expensive.
Can you explain horizontal for someone who may not know?
The horizontal development is everything but the house.
Yeah.
So the roads, drainage, stormwater, which those ponds cost a lot, clearing, grubbing, if you need to haul in dirt, that's
Right.
insanely expensive. And everything except building the physical house, essentially. So getting it ready and preparing what are called finished lots for these builders to either purchase individually, purchase sections at a time, or just take the whole project all at once.
Okay.
Now, are these
You already know from the builders, I'm sure you probably have relationships already, you know what they're looking for exactly before you spend all the time to go through that process.
Yeah,
Like, or do you have something in writing with them, or just, is it you just know what they're looking for, like their size, their different size of?
Both. Both. So when you're working through the entitlements, because a lot of these builders no longer self-develop, they're gonna go to a preferred developer. So if you were to just sell raw land, nothing, it needs a rezone, needs entitlements, which is a fun process. Then even if you went under contract with, let's say, Horton or Lennar, they're going to assign that contract to one of the developers who is gonna produce finished lots for them. But pretty much you talk to them and be like, where do you want to be? What do you need? What kind of product type? Because during the entitlements, you need to have, you got to show the homes. You got to do this. You got to know where all the lots are, the slot sizing, the building pad sizing, all the setbacks, and a lot of permits to go with that. So you have to work with them throughout the process so that you are producing a product that they can break ground on immediately and, put those houses up in 14 days. With whatever they find in the backyard.
That's interesting.
Yep.
That's really cool.
At what point do you go under contract with your builder here?
Nobody will
You get LOI.
give you the time of day until you have a development order, which I don't know if they call it the same here, but in Florida, development order means you have all the permits, you have all the approvals for your preliminary plat to begin construction now, according to the site plan that you've submitted and got approved. So they won't even give you the time of day until you have a development order. So at that point, then, and obviously you can work with them throughout the process, like, hey, what's your target for finished lot pricing, et cetera. And you work on getting your horizontal bids for the site work and infrastructure. But usually throughout that process, you have that discussion, but some of them may or may not go under contract with you. It really depends because a lot of them, at the end of the day, they hold all the cards. So you're really taking a calculated risk on trusting that they are going to execute because they will only use their contracts and they're very one-sided. So it's all about the relationship and the confidence that if 3 builders back out, one has you.
So besides demographics, what else do you look for in these large tracts of land? Is there anything you avoid?
It needs to have utilities. That's a big one. Sewer, if possible. That helps a lot because you get a limited density when you're on septic or an alternative system. So utilities, road frontage, access, and then you want to look out for any kind of wetlands, environmental constraints, etc. And then zoning is a big one as well. I'm not that scared of rezonings until I go up to the podium. Then I'm shaking. Scary stuff. Because there's a lot of money on the line, based on essentially how much they like you and how many protesters came, which is always going to be protested. Every time. And,
Can you talk about some of the things that they've done?
Oh my God.
The
So
way you said every time.
every time, it's a given. You will always have NIMBYs showing up. And it's typically, a lot of the neighbors, people in the community. In my case, it's, I don't want to see those trees cut down. Where are the bears and snakes going to go? I don't know, maybe the 400-acre preserve right by there. And, I've had biker gangs show up and kick down the door. And my first ever one that was a trip. Biker gang came, printed out, pictures and, tweets and social media and all that stuff. Started reading them, almost started a riot. As soon as I got the approval, it was, everyone is murmuring and it was 100, 150 people. And they tried to jump me after I left. But they're not fun meetings because as soon as you put on the developer hat, you're the big bad guy with daddy's money or this or that. Just coming to take away their livelihoods and ruin their communities. So you're always gonna get flack for that. It's part of the business.
So in Orleans Parish in particular, like you have to go through a whole process. They literally have a manual of a process, step-by-step process that you have to do all these community engagement things before. So is that not something that like not your parish, your counties are not requiring?
They do not require it, but I still do it.
Okay.
So, for example, I have one development for 107 homes, and we did get the rezone on that. That was the biker gang one. So fun. And there's a church next door to it, and I held a community meeting at that church. We sent letters to everybody within a certain radius and people that have voiced concerns, etc. And a lot more people than I thought showed up, and they were all fine and dandy. They were asking questions, engaging with them. I was there for about 4 hours, and just having a good discussion with them. Like, look, this isn't going to impact you at all. It's not going to impact traffic. A couple more cars on the road, and I had that. And then the same people showed up angry
Right.
at the official meeting.
Yeah.
So It helps in the eyes of the commissioners, because at the end of the day, you just need a majority vote. But what I like to do is, I like to give up more than what is required and do more than what is required, so that I don't have to, scrape my teeth on every one of these, wondering if we're gonna get that. When we build that good reputation from the start, because I wanna be doing this 10, 20 years from now. I'm not at the apex of my career. I'm just getting started. I'd rather start with a better reputation, do those meetings, take that, people yelling at you, wanting to fight you, just because you're trying to build houses that, families can live in. And so, yeah, but they're not required in a lot of these places, but kind of, it shows that you're not some big developer that's coming in to destroy everybody's lives and, bulldoze, fucking community center or whatever. So it does help a lot.
Do you try to steer away from like when you're marketing to the municipalities versus like the unincorporated cities? Like, 'cause like when you're dealing with the cities, they have a different set of rules, right?
Mhm.
Like then the unincorporated areas would be much easier. So are you doing both of them, or you're like, or does it just depend? Or are you guys?
It just depends where the land is.
Are you guys in like multiple markets, or like?
Yeah, we're everywhere that we can be right now, yeah.
Okay, and do you dive deep into the zoning code, like do you go through the zoning, because that's like the ordinance and stuff? That's not, oh my god, that's like crazy, like how, for me, it would like put me to sleep trying to read this stuff.
Yeah, honestly, it's really not that bad. I look up what's the existing zoning.
Yeah.
I find projects nearby, see what zoning they have and what the density they got is, and what the available utilities are, et cetera. And you can always look up the meeting minutes from the meetings that they did to get that approval, et cetera. And then it's also a very simple call to call the planning department. Nobody else calls them, so they pick up just about every time. Call them or send them an email, and they can just break it down for you right there, and they'll say, it's kind of a stretch if you want to rezone this to get 5-6 units per acre, just because of what we've seen so far on other projects. So you get all the information you need just by reaching out and speaking directly to the inspector.
When you're platting those subdivisions out, or your civil engineer's platting subdivisions, is he going in there and like looking for nuances, like, is there to make more lots than what maybe another engineer might not have been able to?
Yeah, no, he has to. So he has to do everything according to the local code. So fortunately, I'm not the one who has to read all that. And then he'll go through, read all that, et cetera. And the other thing is you do what's called a pre-app meeting. So before you submit your official application, which costs thousands, after you've already spent $100,000, $150,000 on civil plans. So this helps you from going too deep, kind of without a good guess on what you're doing. So it's like I had one this morning actually, for one of our projects. It's a meeting where they review your conceptual site plan and layout, and give you feedback on that before you start on construction drawings, which is the expensive part.
Gotcha. And so the civil engineer, he's the one, goes through the book of all the details,
Yeah.
the sleepy stuff.
And this is all being done before you close on the property?
Yes.
What's the total due diligence? What's everything you have to do while you're just under contract?
Everything?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, to give an example, I've got one property, so one that I'm thinking of right now. So we have to do a rezone, and it's above a certain size, above 50 acres. So not only do I need to get county approval, I need to get state approval. So we have our first county meeting in October, and up to this point we've done surveys, wetlands and environmental study, geotech, traffic study, traffic impact analysis. We have to send specialists to make sure there's no endangered birds or trees, or any kind of protected species of any sort, flora or fauna, and do all that. And that will typically run you about $100,000. And you need all that for the rezoning, that they could make or break your entire life right there. And you get the rezone, then you got to go to the state. They have to approve it. Go back to the county, And then that's when the fun starts. Then your engineer gets involved, besides for coordinating the rest of the due diligence and maybe an initial drawing, but not like an official site plan or plat. More of like a, here's the property, it's a rectangle, more boxes for the lots and like roads. So nothing crazy, just black and white. And then they start working on the civil permit designs and then construction drawings. And that's when it gets pretty expensive. And then that's another 6-month process typically. So 6 months for rezone, 6 months to get civil approval to begin construction development.
Gotcha. So cold calling, wholesaling, flipping, all those combined. What's your biggest nightmare story? I'm sure you have a few.
Oh man. The first one I think of was this house I put under contract, and at first I was really excited because it was a great price. I got it for $140. The ARV on it was about $450, and it couldn't have needed more than $120 in work. So it was a great deal all around. It had a tenant in there who was non-paying, and it was in foreclosure. Don't know why. Tenant, but he wasn't paying. And the tenant was not a very savory individual. The first time I walked through there, there were no lights on. He had about 10 or 12 pit bulls. It was rank. And he had, for all the bedrooms except for the master bedroom, they had padlocks on the outside of the doors. So you wonder what was going on. And when we had to end up evicting him, and this is all while we were under contract, and we spent about $10,000 to $15,000 just clearing out all the junk, and he left several of the dogs there, and by the time we got there, they were puddles, essentially. And so we had to pay people extra to clean all that out and do all that. And the smell was horrendous. And we did all that, and just to find out that you have to replace just about every piece of wood in that house, just because of wood rot, a lot of water damage, etc. And so we were in it for about 15, 20 grand, and we sent it back out of the deal. Because it would have cost way too much to finish that out.
You have a funny one now, so we're not all depressed. Like, I was cold calling someone and they wanted to fight me at the Popeyes parking lot. That was one I had. That's a little funny.
I've had some of those.
Yeah.
Show up, a funny slur, or not kind of a slur, but an insult I learned.
PG-13, let's keep it. We're on live stream.
Yeah. I was calling this man, and this was like our 10th call together, and he had like a little commercial industrial park, like auto body shop, stuff like that, just a couple warehouses clustered together. And I made him an offer, and he blew up, thinking it was worth 3 times what it was just because of a certain road it was on in a certain city. And I still remember to this day. Now, it was on speakerphone, everyone in the office could hear. And they said this to me for months after, before he hung up and said he wanted to fight me in a Popeyes parking lot. When he was freaking out, he was like, you need to sharpen your pencil, boy. And I thought that was one of the most creative.
Sharpen your pencil,
Sharpen
boy.
your pencil.
I like that.
Like, just calling me an idiot without saying it, but you need to.
I'm gonna
It makes
steal that.
sense.
That's amazing.
I like it. And I really appreciated that one.
And the boy at the end is good too, boy.
Yeah, no, just like that. He had a strong Southern accent.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was awesome.
So I have a few quick questions for you, and then we're gonna start to land the plane. Take a few audience questions if anybody has them. But what are your long-term goals? Do you ever want to hold rentals? What are your long-term goals?
So I do hold rentals.
Do you have
So we didn't just flip and sell everything. Sometimes we keep it if it made a lot of sense. And just build equity and hold long term there.
single family, multifamily?
Single family.
Okay, gotcha. And this is with a partner?
Yeah. So I mean, from start to finish, probably about this month last year is when I started really getting into some of the subdivision development stuff, getting a first deal, figuring it all out. Okay, we're not just gonna buy and sell the raw land at a markup. Like, I can spend $300,000-$400,000, get all the plans and everything permitted. I can make a whole lot more on it. And so, with about 700 units in the pipeline right now, just across a couple deals. You know, I think we can easily grow that to 2,000 to 3,000 a year consistently. And then the end goal would be to do a lot of the vertical construction. That would be the next step. And then maybe some more, kind of like more like passion project, like master plan communities. So instead of just putting up subdivisions for the purpose of just housing, you know, yeah, it'll have some amenities and stuff like that, but proper master plan communities, you know, in the thousands of lot range, to where you can really basically build a city around it. Because at that point, now you're not just going to like D.R. Horton or anything like that. It's, you're developing it all out, doing all the infrastructure, attracting tenants for businesses. So, you know, let's say, you know, you have a tennis club there or a country club, kind of like that, is kind of the gist of it. And really developing a sense of community as opposed to house. So I think long-term in doing some of the vertical construction itself too would be, you know, probably the goal there.
So just like your standard person looking to get started in either wholesaling, single family or small multifamily or flipping, what advice do you have for them either?
Trial by fire. I would say don't just quit your job thinking that you can make something happen. You need to give yourself a year to work on it, you know, just chip away at it bit by bit before you fully commit and go into it. Unless you have something really good, and ask everybody every question you can, even if it's going to make you sound like an idiot. That's how I learned from scratch with all this stuff. Because, you know, my partner, I mean, we really only did like the single family stuff, and then I kind of took off and we were doing the land development. Is just call up everybody you can, ask questions, and learn from the people that don't just have like the biggest social media presence, I guess you could say, because they typically have something to sell you, whether it's a course or whatever.
Yeah.
You don't need a course, you just need to go and do it.
Yeah.
So taking the first step and doing it, doing the stuff that nobody else wants to do, like cold calling, makes a really, really big difference.
Gotcha. And how can people find you? What are your socials? I know you're on
Twitter,
Yeah,
that's about it.
Yeah.
Eventually maybe YouTube podcast just for fun, but it's a little tough managing development and, you know, going back to school after the summer.
Yeah.
So it's all time
How
alive.
do you balance school and?
I don't.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't. I work until, you know, besides for going to classes sometimes, depends on the class. It's, you know, it's like typically standard work day, you know, 9 to 5, something like that. And then I'll do all my schoolwork or whatever afterwards, sometimes homework, or maybe I'll take a day off or two to get ready for an exam. But it's kind of, you know, you just have to have really good time management, which I don't, but I try.
Good deal.
Are you finishing your undergrad degree?
I just started my undergrad degree.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to my sophomore year.
So if you're wanting to, you know, scale and hire cold callers, let's say, what would you recommend in terms of timeline and budget for, man, this cold caller, I hired them, it's been 2 or 3 months, like, you know, just what are your steps if you're saying, hey, I'm looking to build my wholesaling, fix and flip kind of business, want to hire some cold callers, what do those steps look like exactly, and, you know, kind of on the brief end of just how much you can look to, you know, budget for this kind of thing.
Yeah, so first thing I would say is 6 months. 6 months is the minimum I would say is a trial run, because from first call to close, it's usually going to be 6 to 12 months. The calls you're making today are for, you know, the future if you're following up correctly. So I would say, you know, obviously identify your target assets, areas, etc., what you really want to hone in and focus on. Acquire the data. So whether you go to the county, I mean, you can use PropStream, but you know, I would not recommend pre-foreclosures because everybody is calling those. You want to go for the stuff that there's little to no competition for, whether it's a market area or, you know, specific type of lead or asset. And then, you know, that'll typically run you, you know, let's say you're paying 10 cents a lead for skip tracing. You want to start with a minimum of 5,000 to 10,000 leads. So $500 to $1,000 for data, let's say, not including the cost of just, acquiring that list. And then you're gonna wanna get a dialer, all of them about the same, 150 to 200 bucks a month per caller. So now you're at high end, let's say 1,200. 200 recurring, and then 1,000 initial. And then cold caller, it really depends on where you're hiring, what kind of experience they have. They can run you for a really good one, 1,000, 1,500 bucks a month, something like that. Sometimes you get them cheaper, but I'd be wary. And so I would say budget for about $2,000 a month if you really, really want to do it right.
What's your expectations with their calls? Like, how many calls per hour would you expect them to make once they get going?
I do not care how many calls they make. I care how many leads they produce and how many of those leads turn into closings. So typically, just standard calling day on a predictive dialer, they can make anywhere between 500 to 800 calls a day.
Like the whole team or the one person?
Individual, one call.
Between 5 to 8. So
Yeah.
is there like a time, there's no set time limit or anything like that? Or is there anything to keep them in check? Because we were thinking about adding that cold calling, but we never did it. Like, I know some people maybe like, don't stay under 5 minutes per call or stay under 10 minutes. Do you do that, or do you just like kind of let them run with it?
The more I manage and control them, the worse it'll be. I mean, I've learned that simplicity is bliss, honestly.
And just curious, with why so South America versus, like, I know the Philippines, I know a lot of people hire over there, but wouldn't it be cheaper in the Philippines, or is it more about a demographic issue in Florida, because we have a lot of Latin influence in Florida, so maybe is that the correlation, is that why?
So that's part of it. One thing is that everybody has decided in the past couple of years, first of all, everyone's decided to become a wholesaler.
Right. Yeah.
Based on all the gurus selling courses, stuff like that. Hey, you can make $50,000 a month, guaranteed, no effort. Buy my course. Is the prices have been driven up a lot in the Philippines. They're not nearly as reliable because they know with all these wholesalers, all these flippers, everybody, they will always find work. They know where to go to find work, and they will always get it. So unless you're giving them really good incentives and they're good, trustworthy people, and they respect you, they won't really hop around, but they have a really high churn rate. And now it used to be, $4, $5, $6 an hour. Now for a decent one, you're still pushing 10 to 15. Might as well hire an intern here for that.
You're not paying them through like Upwork, you're paying directly.
No, they work for me directly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And is it, do you mind me asking, like Colombia, or is it like, do you prefer, is it a specific country, or just, is it?
My team is based in Venezuela.
Venezuela?
Yeah.
Are they better in English than generally? I don't know, like.
Yeah, so like you mentioned earlier, the other reason why I kind of wanted to try the switch was Filipinos, their language is a whole lot more different from English than Spanish is to English. And the other thing is we do have a lot, like you mentioned, a lot of Spanish speakers here, and that helps a lot more than you would think.
Yeah.
Because then you can just switch to Spanish.
Absolutely.
And we are used to a Spanish accent. We are not used to a Filipino accent.
Right.
And the other thing is they're a lot more similar to us culturally and can connect to us on a personal level a lot better than a Filipino could.
Especially in Florida, because you have a lot of people in New York, you have a lot of people in Dominican Republic, a lot of different people
So
in Florida. Everybody is a Florida.
yeah, so for us, it's like if someone calls us and we hear, a slight Spanish accent, that's normal because everybody speaks Spanish except for me apparently. And so there's nothing out of the blue about that. I don't immediately think, oh, call center, scammer, any of that.
Yeah.
And the fact that they don't sound like they're reading a script, and they're just saying, hey, what's up, man? How's it going? I just had a quick question. It goes over a lot easier than, trying to get grandma to buy gift cards.
Got time for one more question, anybody? No? Okay. Are you planning to go to Chimes?
Sure.
Sure. All right. Can we show hands? People who go to Chimes? Anybody? A couple of y'all? All right. Can we get a hand for Alex for coming?